Hello everyone. I'm going to be doing a quick well, it's actually probably not going to be quick. I'm going to be doing a video that I've been wanting to do for a while, and it's basically kind of me telling the process of what I went through when I made my first film, Strangely Depicted. Now, I'm doing this for two reasons. One is because hopefully one day I'll be totally rich and famous and there'll be people who will actually want to know this story. The other reason is because my memory isn't very good and I'm forgetting more and more about this every day. So I also kind of want this just for my own recollection, sadly. And I mean, to be perfectly fair though, this was almost 10 years ago for me. So the fact that I'm not remembering everything totally perfect is kind of understandable. But anyways, so basically what was going on, at this point, I'd been writing for a good couple of years and I was really getting into it, and I decided that this is what my passion was going to be, telling stories. And I had gotten to the point where I decided that I wanted to make a film. And my friends and I, we were talking about it for a while, and we were kind of kicking around different ideas as far as what we could do with no money, because none of us had any money, what was feasible, all that good stuff. But they weren't like really fully committed to it. And that's something that if you ever try to do a film independently, you'll find out very quickly that if you tell people like, hey, do you want to be in a movie? Or, hey, I'm making a movie, do you want to help? Almost everyone will say yes immediately. But then once they find out how hard it is, once you tell them, okay, well now you got to read the script, you got to memorize your lines, you got to show up to rehearsal, you got to do this, you got to do that, we got to block, we got to do this, we got to, then it quickly they're kind of like, oh, maybe not, So I was having a lot of issues with that. Some of my close friends and then some people I knew from work. Nobody just really seemed fully committed. So I kind of started thinking about this idea, like, well, maybe there's something I could do on my own, because I knew I was fully committed and I knew I could count on me. So I was just like, is there any way I could possibly make like a movie with just myself? And I kind of started thinking about different story angles where that would make sense for me to be playing all of the different characters. And I had this really rough idea where I was like, this guy, he's always like getting into arguments with other people, and he thinks most other people are dumb. And also, like most people, he kind of feels that the world would be better off if everyone was more like him. And so he kind of creates this like virtual reality type thing. It wasn't going to be virtual reality specifically, but that's the closest thing I could think of to describe it. But basically, he kind of creates this world where everyone is like him. And, he has conversations with himself. He has a girlfriend who's just like him. And everything starts off all like bright and merry and whatever. But then after a while, he just gets really bored with it. And he doesn't realize he's bored. And he doesn't realize that he's miserable. And then suddenly he starts like changing his mind about things just so he could argue with people. And eventually he kind of realizes that he's the problem, that he's just a very argumentative and very confrontational person. And so he just can't live without it, So it was just a really rough idea. But I didn't know exactly how to take it or exactly what to do with it. And then Amazon came out with this thing where they said, we're doing this thing called Amazon Studios, which was a independent film competition. They're like, we're looking to help people who don't have any money, because that was always a big thing, and all their things are like, we don't care about production value, we don't care about special effects, we just want to see a good film, tell a good story, show that you know how to edit well, that you know how to have pacing and have a flow to the story. Like I said, special effects, any of that didn't really matter. If it looked like crap, it didn't matter. Or even if you couldn't do it at all, they were even saying, like, one example they gave, like, if there's supposed to be an explosion and you don't have any type of money for that or whatever, you could just draw a picture of an explosion and then put the sound effect in. Like, they really didn't care about special effects at all, which I thought was really cool, because there's a lot of people who are very talented who want to make films, but they just don't have like any money at all. So I thought this was really great, and I thought it was a really great opportunity, and they were doing it. It started at the beginning of the year in 2010, I believe, and then it was going for the full year, and every month they would pick a winner, and that person would get $100,000, and then at the end of the year, they were going to look at all the films like collectively, and they pick like a grand prize winner that would get $1 million. So obviously a chance to win $1 million is an opportunity I absolutely could not pass up. So I decided to go ahead and do a film completely on my own. And so I brought out the idea that I had about the one guy, who creates the world and everything. And there was another idea that I had called Psychoville. And the reason why I didn't go through with this one is because it was too much like Silent Hill. And I didn't know that at the time. At the time, I didn't even know what Silent Hill was. But then when I was telling my friend about the idea, he's like, this sounds a lot like Silent Hill. And then he told me about Silent Hill, and I was like, oh yeah, that is pretty much the same thing. So I decided not to do that idea. But I took some of the characters I had developed from that idea and brought them over to this story. Like I had already thought of Jekyll and Beelzebub, and then I created Michael and Edward specifically for this story. And those were like the four main characters, and I kind of have a few little offshoot characters here and there. So anyway, so I had the characters, and I slightly changed it around a little bit. Instead of him just arguing with himself, the other personalities were going to start trying to kill him, like the main guy. And that's how he was going to find out that he was a serial killer. Now, in the beginning, it was just going to be a dream, like I said, or like a virtual reality thing, which I really didn't like, simply because I don't like those stories where it really gets you invested and you're kind of wondering, how is this all going to end? Or like, how is this possible? Or how, what's the conclusion here? But then you don't get the conclusion because they're like, oh, it's just a dream, or oh, it's just an illusion, or, like whatever. So I really don't like those type of endings. But at the time I couldn't think of anything else. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go with that. Maybe I'll come up with something as I'm going along. And I started filming, and I ended up running into a lot of problems because this was the first time I had ever done a film. I never went to film school, anything like that. So I did make a lot of rookie mistakes. Like sometimes I wouldn't fully check the background, and then as I was watching the video trying to edit it, I would be like, oh shoot, there's a Coca-Cola banner in the back room. In the background. So obviously I can't use this because I can't have the Coca-Cola label showing up, because I'll get sued. There will be times where, since I was in front of the camera, not behind the camera, like there'd be certain noises that I wouldn't hear, or just certain things in the background that, I don't see. It's like, oh, well, this whole day's worth of shooting is wasted now because of this little mistake or that little mistake. There's a few times where I accidentally deleted things. There's quite a few times where I would go outside to certain locations to film, and then it would start raining. Like the opening scene, like where we're on the cliff. The first 2, maybe even 3 times I tried to film that, I ended up driving out to the scene, and then it started raining. Which in hindsight might have been kind of cool. Like it probably could have worked with rain, but continuity wise it would have been super difficult, because unless you're just going to start out completely soaked, it's really hard to match up continuity. If you start out just kind of wet and then you go through an entire take, you can't start off kind of wet again. You'd have to completely change and then dry yourself off and then get yourself kind of wet again, which I didn't have that many change of clothes or anything. Plus, like the makeup for Beelzebub, that would have been really difficult, because it would wash away. So then I'd have to take it off and redo it. And so it would have been a real pain anyways. So I don't know. So anyways, I was running into all these problems, and it was taking me quite a while. And I know my family, like I had told them about it, and they felt this was a really good potential opportunity. And they were really nervous that I wasn't going to make the deadline. And at the end of November, I had finally filmed all the scenes, and I put it all together. And unfortunately, it was only 50 minutes long. And the competition required that it had to be an hour and 10 minutes. So now I only had a month left to come up with an additional 20 minutes, which is quite a bit. And I'm actually glad this happened though, because this is when I started to film a lot of the interview scenes. And the main reason why I came up with it is because it was all in one location. It was in my garage, and that's actually why it's so dark with just the one light above, is because I didn't want anything else to be in the background. So I didn't have to worry about that anymore. Again, I didn't have to worry about driving out someplace because it was right there in my home. So I just figured it'd be a lot easier. And then luckily, I had been playing the characters for a while. So when I was writing the scenes, the dialogue came very natural. I was able to write all of those scenes in like a day or two. And then I started filming them, and it actually took up more time than I expected. So I was able to cut out some of the other stuff I didn't like. Like I cut out the whole girlfriend angle because me in drag was just not pretty at all. I'm sure some of my family and friends are probably going to watch this and be like, what? Where is this footage? I want to see it. Well, guess what? It's deleted, and I would have burned it if I could. It was awful. It is awful. It's not out there. Don't even ask. So yeah, so I was able to cut out some of those things, which I was so grateful for, because I thought they were just really, really terrible. And there's a couple other things I didn't really like so much, and I was able to cut those out as well. Plus, I felt that the interview scenes were like some of the best parts of the film anyways. That's when you really got the feel for the characters and like their personalities and how they interacted with one another. And I just think they look really cool too. So I was really happy with those, really happy it turned out that way. And again, I was really crunching the deadline. The deadline was December 31st. And I'm filming these in the month of December. And all my family is like really super nervous that I'm going to miss out on this. And then I actually finished it on Christmas Day, ironically enough. I was working on it Christmas Eve, and by 1 a.m. Christmas Day, I had actually finally had it finished. I burnt a bunch of DVD copies, and I put it in everyone's stocking. Because normally, the way my family does it, we wake up Christmas morning, we do the stockings first and then presents later. For some reason, I'm not sure why, this year they decided to do it the opposite way. We opened presents first, and then we were going to do the stockings later. So we opened all the presents, and then my mom tells everyone, hey, we got a little while before I got to like start cooking and doing this and doing that, you know, because we're going to have people over. She's like, what does everyone want to do? And I was just like, hey, what if we watch a movie? And my mom's like she totally didn't get it. She's like, Nate, I just told you, like, what do you, we don't have time for that. Like, I got to do this, I got to do this. Meanwhile, my sister just starts looking at me, and she's like, give me this look. And then all of a sudden it clicks, and she's like, oh, you finished it. And I was like, yep. And my dad's like, put that shit on right now. And so everyone got super excited. I put it on, and everyone immediately regretted it. Not because it was bad. It was just because, you know, most people don't really want to see their son, you know, talk about killing people and raping dead bodies and smearing blood all over their face. Like, most parents just don't really want that image of their children, which I totally understood. But they were still very impressed with it in terms of like what I was able to do and with how little I had to work with. Because not only was I by myself, but I had no money. I had a camera, a laptop, and like $200. And I actually pulled off a pretty darn decent film, especially considering that. So they were pretty impressed with it. And then I went to submit it, and then I realized that they had a little disclaimer, and I swear they just added this because I did not see it before, but they said that the entries for the final end of the year competition, which was the only one left, it had to be an hour and 25 minutes long. This was an hour and 10 minutes long. So now I had to come up with an additional 15 minutes in less than 6 days. So I did a little epilogue thing where it was kind of like after the movie wrapped up, it was kind of like these... Yo, dogs. Sorry, I have too many animals. Anyways, it was like a little epilogue, like where after the events of the film, like all the characters kind of like reflected on what happened. And it wasn't really great, but it wasn't bad either. It was mainly, it just felt a little unnecessary. You know, like if you were watching the film, you would probably feel like, okay, yeah, it definitely, this was the place to end it. This wasn't really necessary. But unfortunately, it was necessary due to the time restraints or the time requirements. That's the word I'm looking for. So I did manage to get it done. I submitted it. Unfortunately, I did not win. But, you know, whatever. And then after I didn't win with that, I had showed it to some of my friends, and one of my friends who is more musically gifted than I am was like, you know what, the music you did was pretty good, but there really wasn't a whole lot. Like it wasn't like a complete score all throughout. There's just a few parts here and there that had music. So he said, you know what, maybe we could like, you know, go through it and I could do like a full score. I could kind of work with what you got and just kind of add a bit more. We could have a full score for the film and then submit it to somewhere like Sundance. So I did that. When I submitted it to Sundance, though, I cut out the epilogue thing, And unfortunately, I deleted it, and I do sort of regret that. I mean, even though, again, it wasn't necessarily great and it wasn't really necessary, I think it would have been kind of cool to just have, for maybe like a special features. Like, it would be a great, like if it was on DVD and then this was like on the special features, it would be great for something like that. But unfortunately, I didn't think about that at the time, so I did delete it. But the score I thought turned out really fantastic. The only thing I regret about the score is the fact that I am not good with sound editing. So there's certain times where there's certain things in the music that were like really good, but you can't hear too well. Or there's certain times where the music is a bit too loud and it's kind of hard to hear the dialogue. Like, I had a lot of trouble really mixing the two. But the score is very, very good, and I did like it a lot. And I did think it improved a lot of the slower scenes, especially. And yeah, overall, that was pretty much the process. I think I'm going to go and do a separate video where I'll go into more detail about like specific events as far as exactly what I did for this situation, any problems that came up with this and whatever. But like, that was like the basic overview of my experience with my first film. And despite the fact that it was pretty hard, I really like it. I'm really happy that I went through with it. I'm really happy that I stuck with it, that I overcame all the obstacles. One other thing I'll mention too is that originally when I was planning this, I just kept thinking like, okay, I have no money, so low budget, low budget, low budget. And most of it was really just conversations. And especially since, I was by myself, but then I had seen the movie Saw, and I saw what they were able to do with a pretty low budget. They only had like $1.2 million, I think, but it looks like a normal like $10 to $20 million film. Like, if you didn't know, you would have no idea they made it for so much less money. So when I saw that, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to write the film I want to make, and I'll try to make it work. And if I absolutely can't, then I'll have to, figure something else out. And to my credit, I was actually able to film every scene I wrote. There wasn't anything I had to cut because I couldn't film it. I actually found a way with everything. So I'm pretty proud of that too. So overall, that was my experience. I absolutely love the experience. I'm very happy with the film. And I'm going to be doing the behind the scenes thing because that's really how I learned how to make movies. I didn't get to go to film school. I just watched like behind the scenes footage and interviews with other directors. So I'm going to go and do that too. So hopefully someone can learn from my experiences. And yeah. All right. Have a good one.